Hello and welcome to a new edition of Political Smackdown. We have our regular crew here this week, Wes Westmoreland, Betsy Wells, and Andy Dedman. And you know, Betsy, I've just been thinking, looking around the table, you're probably the only one of the four of us that within your party everybody recognizes as a good Democrat or Republican. Andy's got his doubters, Wes and I have our doubters, but I don't know if you have any doubters, Betsy.
I'm sure.
Well,
Thank you.
Let's talk about something local to start out with, because it's beginning to come to fruition that the time is about here when there will be a public hearing on October 21st in the commission chambers. That is a part of the process to borrow the money that will be needed to complete the new Justice Center for the county in Uptown Shelby. This is about 10 days old as we look at it, so there's been a little change, but not a lot. But this is a drone and aerial. You see the current courthouse up in the top left. That will eventually be removed, and there will be parking there for all of this. On this end you see is the sheriff's department and jail, and then you have the administrative and other buildings there. This is made possible in large part because while Tim Moore was the Speaker of the House and our longtime representative, he and the legislature have brought $103 million of the cost of this building to Cleveland County in the form of state grants. Andy, back when the Democrats did that, we called it pork. Now it's investments in the community, right?
No, you call it needed investments.
But the Justice Center will be a total of about 312,800 square feet. The court system will have 151,000 and change. The sheriff's office will have 41,600. The detention center, that's where they keep the bad guys, as Charlie Van Hoy used to call them, is about 128,000, and it will include the district attorney's offices. There'll be a public defender's office. That's a state thing, and the state actually pays Cleveland County some reimbursement for that. The register of deeds will move there, the judges, the magistrates, the clerk of court, the sheriff's office, his staff, all the detention pods. I think that's jail cells. Isn't that a nice way of saying jail cells? Yeah. Secure parking, evidence storage, courtrooms, restrooms, elevators, public waiting areas, as well as other functions. It's on schedule and it's on budget, according to the commissioners. And so this week they passed a resolution to reimburse themselves some $1 million for money they've spent, and they intend to eventually, after they vote on it, have the public hearing and vote on it, take it to the local government commission and get approval. They'll borrow $75 million in limited obligation bonds, and that will happen probably sometime later. They're still spending the $103 million from the state. They've had $9 million 2 years in a row in 22 and 23. They took out of their own capital reserves and put toward the construction. But the total cost is about $202.7 million, of which $75 million is all that will be borrowed, which, Andy, in the real estate world, that's a relatively low loan to value. But it is a lot of money for the taxpayers of of Cleveland County. It's not just Kings Mountain.
Well, they're in it too.
Yeah, they're in it too, but it's all of us. But the good news is that the planning has been done in such a way that the commissioners insist that there will not be any impact on the property tax rate, that it's all been calculated in to the current rate. So for that purpose, there won't be any. So Wes, get us started. We're here, we're going to borrow money, and it's not going to be as long as it has been.
Well, we've paid down a lot of our debt in Cleveland County, so there is the ability to borrow this money. I think the vast majority has been paid down. The only significant left, Cleveland County schools, of course, through the county, but is the responsibility of the school system.
Well, here's one good example. The last payment from the county on the construction of the LeGrand Center has been made. So that debt has gone away.
And I think that's
Okay,
significant.
that's
This is not a stretch, but it's still a lot of money. And while I don't want to in any way distract from what Speaker Moore was able to put together to do for this county, I think we also have to remember Senator Alexander and Representative Hastings. General Assembly has worked hard to make this happen. But once that check's written, once the money's moved, it falls to the county commission to make this happen. And I think it's pretty significant that a project of this size and scope is on budget, it's on time. You know, we've been through 3 different managers since this started. The county commission's really had to step up and do it, and this is in the middle of 2 other construction projects, the Board of Elections and of course the 911 center that has to be completed before they can start moving into this new building. So yes, an awful lot of money. It's 60% complete, but again, this is a 75-year building or more, hopefully, that will take us well into the future. Mike, we just finished phase 2 at Pinnacle. We've got empty classrooms. Some would argue that that's not smart, but that's intended to carry us forward to our ultimate number of students, and I think we'll see the same thing here. There'll be some elbow room for the time being, but as the county grows over the next multiple decades, this building will be full.
Well, Betsy, maybe it's fair to say that some of those increased property taxes you're paying on Dixon School Road because your value went up so much,
Will go to the
it's going to
new
go to
court, of
justice.
course. Yes, it's going to go to justice. I think it's going to be wonderful to have this new courthouse. I remember how excited we were back in 1974 when the new one, this one that's now going to be torn down, was built, and it wasn't very pretty. It wasn't as pretty as the old one, and I think this new one that's going up said they were going to look at the architectural style and history of Cleveland County, so I think it's going to be pretty. And you know, it's going to be room for 600 inmates. That kind of surprised me. That's a lot of people, and I don't know, is it going to be a place where we would take inmates from other counties or whatever? I don't know, but the sheriff could answer that. But and the DA's office is going to be back then at the courthouse. So I think it's great that they're all going to be together. But I look forward to seeing, and like you say, Wes, it's going to be a growing building. It will be one that will be used for 50, 75 years. And I don't think any of us will be here then, but our children and grandchildren will benefit. But I think it will be an asset to Cleveland County and to the landscape of Shelby.
That total parcel, Andy, is about 8.5 acres, and it looks to me like 43,560, 312. But most of it's going to be building.
Yep. There's not going to be a whole lot of grass to cut. Well, the only concern I've really got, Mike, is I don't know if they've made enough of an allotment for jail cells. Because let's face it, I mean, when they finally move into it, it's going to be close to capacity. Not at capacity, but it's going to be close. And we're going to have to keep the annex.
I think the annex will have to stay.
It's going to have to stay. I mean, I don't think there's any real chance of that closing anytime soon. But, because let's just face it, the sheriff has said more than one time, there's always new customers coming for his business. So there's always that going on. But the question I've got is, what about once they vacate some of this other that's not being tore down? I mean, a register of deeds is going to be vacating over in the county office building. So that space will be open.
And the government has a way of expanding into space.
Well, I was going to say, if your good Republican heart was going to admit that the county commissioners, all Republicans, are going to grow government, and they're going to give it some elbow room to grow, Mike.
Well, I
just want to see if you and Wes were going to admit to that.
Well, it's a lot of building. I'm not going to second guess them. There's a lot of thought that has gone into it. It is indeed quite a complex, and I would be willing to bet you there's not a county under 150,000 in the state that will have nearly the complex that Cleveland County is about to have.
I tell you, you just about have to pull over and get a parking space to look at it. I mean, it really is awe-inspiring. It really is.
But every time one of these is built across North Carolina, and it only happens every so often, everybody in that community says, wow, look at this building, it's so nice, it's so big, it's so everything. And then it becomes older, and that's what we're seeing here. Ours is the new one for the state.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not lost on me that this $202 million that its total is going to be, comes after the big inflationary increase in real estate prices about the time of COVID and following, and the cost of raw materials is through the roof compared to what it would have been could it have been built 7 or 8 years ago.
That's true.
So that's a part of it, is it's just the world we now live in, and that's just what stuff costs.
The other thing too, Mike, is materials after the hurricanes have come through. Just imagine just what in Western North Carolina, they've absorbed tremendous amount of building materials to rebuild stuff. And you had the previous hurricane in the eastern part of the state. I mean, all of these building materials are being absorbed that would have ordinarily went, and that just drives up cost of materials.
It does, but part of the planning that you talked about is not just the layout of the building and how it's going to be utilized, but the fact that the county had money in reserve to go ahead and purchase this and contract for a lot of this before we saw at least a lot of that spiking increases. And now, as we get closer to the bonds for the final 75 million, we see interest rates dropping this week with promise of 2 more drops before the end of the year, which means we're borrowing that money for less money, total cost. So again, a lot of planning in this building, and a big part of it's financial. Make sure we're getting the best bang for our dollar we can get.
And I think we need to stress too what you said, Mike, about how the county will see no impact on the current property tax rate by borrowing this $73 million.
Well, then that is an important thing that they've planned. That doesn't mean something else may not impact it, that it wouldn't have impacted as much had we not had this debt. But all other things being equal, barring some unforeseen emergency, it looks like they have done all they could do to make it where this would not cost the taxpayers more than they're already paying. Now, if I was going to be a really good Republican, I could say, well, they could have built 50 million less and cut the tax rate 3 or 4 more cents. Is that not what Republicans are supposed to say, Betsy?
Well, I don't think
Yes,
there is
they
such
are.
a thing
You're
anymore,
right.
though.
But given the
At
debt
one
that's going
time.
away, I don't know that that would necessarily be accurate.
Well, at any rate, we're pleased to see the progress. We're happy that the staff and the commissioners have worked hard to keep it on budget and on time, and it's supposed to open before the end of next year, so we will see if that happens. We're going to go to break just a minute or so early so that we can come back and talk about some other subjects, and we're going to talk about one of Mr. Dedman's favorite things, interest rates, when we come back.
Join us for our 23rd season of Armchair Quarterback on C19 TV. Each week we look at the 4A Burns Bulldogs, the 5A Crest Chargers, the 6A Kings Mountain Mountaineers, and the 3A Shelby Golden Lion. We will also discuss ACC, SEC, and Gardner-Webb football, along with the Carolina Panthers. Watch all season long on C19 TV or streaming online at c19.tv. Join us this October for Cleveland Community College Foundation's 5th Annual Yetis Athletics Golf Tournament. Your support funds student athletes, helping them succeed every step of the way. Play with purpose. Tee off for student success. Visit cccyetis.com to register today.
Welcome back to the second half of Political Smackdown. Interest rates affect every American in some way or the other. The Federal Reserve System, which was established, I guess, in the early part of the 20th century, controls short-term interest rates. And they meet about, 8 or 9 times a year, and this week they met, and in a long anticipated move, one which President Trump said should have been done even before he was elected last year, finally at least partially came to pass. The Federal Reserve lowered the short-term bank-to-bank interest rate 0.25%, or what we call 25 basis points. We saw interest rates go up rapidly in 2022 from all-time lows of 0 to 0.25 or 5% at the interbank rate, up to now it's been 4.5, and it's going down to 4.0 to 4.25 now. Andy, you understand how this works and what it means as well as anybody, and you follow markets, including interest rates and bond markets. Tell us what this means.
Well, basically what's happening is money just got a lot cheaper and it will trickle down to the average person. I mean, your ability
Wait a minute. Trickle down.
I wondered if you was going to catch on that. I wondered.
I wasn't blinking my eyes.
Anyway, what will happen is mortgage rates will get cheaper. Your credit card rates will probably get cheaper. Your car loans will get cheaper. That sort of thing. Money will be easier, hopefully, to get a hold of. And that's what President Trump was trying to do, because when you cannot get your hands on money to make things, to do things with, it stalls your economy out. I mean, money is what makes things move. And if you can't get a hold of money to buy things, nobody else can go out and buy things because you're not buying their things. And that's just really broke down real simple, but that's what happens. And that's, the Fed has been in, it was created in 1913 because there had been a numerous number of recessions that it's just, nobody was actually in control. Now, I know Wes doesn't like the idea of a government involving themselves in the economy, but the Fed does so much more than just that. They're the clearinghouse for all the checks that are written in this country, because there has to be somebody that will take a check written here in Shelby that's going somewhere, maybe in Los Angeles, and they're the clearinghouse for that. I mean, can you imagine if the check written here had to go somewhere like Los Angeles? How are you going to get all that done? And they're the ones that instigate to get that check cashed and the money sent from one to another. That's how that works. They're the ones also take the money that's created by the Treasury Department and is getting shipped to the individual banks. The Treasury doesn't do that. The Fed does. They do so much stuff that people don't realize that is integral part of our economy. So all this, and I read the history of it, Wes, that I really hadn't sat down, and it is fascinating, all the things that they do that really makes our economy run. The main thing that what they're trying to do right now is to create a soft landing, which is hard to do. And it's to let money get loose, try to encourage it to get out into the economy without starting raging inflation. And that was kind of the problem we had when 08, 09, when we had all the crashes occurring because of all the mortgage that just fell apart.
Well, and then during COVID, all that one-time money was pumped into it. That is what made them start raising interest rates, because you had all that money chasing the same amount of goods, basically.
And you had to bleed that money out of the economy somehow. You had too much money chasing too few goods, and that created raging inflation. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, we could spend hours talking about this.
Well, Wes, we found one thing that Andy agrees with Donald Trump on. Interest rates needed to come down.
I do agree with him on that.
I mean, we'll see.
As my daddy said, a blind hog finds an acorn every once in a while.
Now, you said you read the history on the Fed. You certainly didn't read Ron Paul's history on the Fed.
No, I did not.
That would be a good project for you, Mr. Debman.
There's some fiction I don't care for.
The two things you mentioned, the banking crisis, also the housing crisis, the trillions of dollars poured into the economy, was all done by the Fed. Don't forget, they created the problems that y'all mentioned that they're supposedly there to solve and fix. Central planning is never a good thing. How in the world can 12 individuals determine the economic actions of millions of people? That's what they're trying to do, and their goal is to keep inflation 2 to 3%. Inflation, too many dollars to chasing too few goods, yes, but it is the devaluation of every dollar in your pocket, and that hits particularly, and we saw this 25 basis points down, that hits retirees harder than anybody. CDs are going to be worth less. The short-term savings are going to be worth less. And the Fed's a problem. We should do away with it. It was a mistake when it started, and it's caused a big part of the economic problems that we've seen.
So can Trump do away with it by executive order?
I'm sure he thinks he can.
Well,
He thinks he can do a lot of things, but no, that was done by Congress.
No.
Betsy, what are your thoughts on the interest rates?
Well, I was pleased when they dropped, and I hope that they will continue in October and in December, another quarter of a percent. And of course, the feds have a balancing act to maintain, and you hope to have full employment as well as price stability. And if you have an imbalance in one or the other, then that's when you get inflation. So, and I really feel like that we need to maintain the independence of the feds, and not that Trump wants to take it over so he can dictate it. And I hope that Congress will stand firm, and they'll never consider that. So, Andy, I appreciated the history lesson. And Wes, I'll just figure out where you got yours. And I know Rand Paul he brands about a lot of things. But anyway, we'll just move on.
Well, the Federal Reserve has been a very controversial thing in its whole existence in America. It is the system we have now, and let's hope for the best that we do not see an increase in inflation, and that we do have the price stability. And they do think price stability is 2 to 3% a year increase, which, 7% a year over 10 years doubles prices. We all remember when prices were much less at this table because we've all been around a few decades.
And let's not forget, that dollar is backed solely by the faith and credit of the United States of America.
Well, but that opens up another can of worms.
And both of those have gone down the tubes in recent years, and I'd personally like to see a little bit of metal behind every dollar.
I would not have any problem.
We'll talk about the gold standard another time, but let's move on to our last subject. By the time many people see this week's political smackdown, the funeral service for Charlie Kirk will have been held in the football stadium in Phoenix, where the Arizona Cardinals play. It seats 63,000 or so for football and can hold 73,000 for events that can turn the field into seating. While I know we all agree that much of the reaction that has celebrated the fact that Mr. Kirk has gone is not right. I know we all agree on that. It shouldn't matter, politics notwithstanding. But we've even seen at least a few events in North Carolina that just seem unreal. The throwing of paint all over a mural that is understood at UNC Wilmington campus that was painted to honor Mr. Kirk didn't get the normal 24 hours it could stand up for those who didn't like Mr. Kirk, splattered paint all over it with their hands and brushes. More than a week after this horrific killing, what do we know now we did not know last week this time? Obviously, political violence has been on the rise. We had the lady up in Minnesota, it was Speaker of the House, that was murdered this summer. We had the United Healthcare guy murdered because somebody didn't like insurance policies, which are politically related, and so forth. And this Charlie Kirk, and it's just all kind of stuff. Betsy, are we going to see all this political violence get worse, or is there hope for a better mindset to prevail?
I think we need to appeal to all people to be kinder and to tone down the rhetoric. It is abhorrent that Charlie Kirk was killed like that on a campus when he was there speaking to a group. I mean, and of course the person who shot him, they say that he immersed himself in the video game culture. And of course, everybody said he must be from the radical left, but no, that's not true. But it's just terrible. And of course, Mr. Kirk was known for what he was a racist. He talked about how women should be back in 1950.
Wait, I'm not, no,
he's not
I'm not
racist.
going to let that one
All
stand.
right, well, so he had some racist comments.
He did not have racist comments. He said that DEI has caused more welfare, less marriage, and has helped to make the culture go down. He was talking specifically about Ketanji Brown Jackson, Michelle Obama, Sheila Jackson Lee, and if you listen to his own comments in this that's gone all over the place from these other people, it was not racist comments. He was saying that they bragged about being the recipients of DEI. And that's what he was saying.
Well, okay, all right, I'll move on. But he did not, he was a divisive personality with people across America. He was very appealing to the young people that he had this group behind him. And I think that, of course, like I said to start with, his being killed was totally abhorrent. And that is not the way that we should do it. We should appeal to our kinder and gentler angels. And it's up to our leaders to stop everything, the rhetoric that's going on, and turning it to, it's got to be the left, or it's got to be the extreme right. So I just hope we can be kinder, and it teaches us a lesson for our leaders to follow that.
So Andy, is there hope for America to see a lessening of this political violence, not a minute or less, please?
Well, I would hope that they would. It troubles me that every time somebody famous dies, we elevate them to such a level. And there we had 5 police officers, 3 were killed, 2 critically injured, and nobody wants to talk about that. And I have a trouble with that. Mr. Kirk has a widow and 2 kids that'll never know their father. I wish we would talk more about that. I really could care less about his political thing. I don't know that much about him. What I have heard, I don't agree with a lot of them, but I feel more sorry for his wife and his 2 kids than I do anything.
I'll just quickly, I don't know that I can say much more than I said last week, but I'll reiterate, whether it's Kurt, the situation that you brought up, I'm still in shock over the young lady in Charlotte on the train, which I'm convinced all of this is due to bad political decisions. It is all political driven. Betsy, you're right, we need to tone down some rhetoric.
All right, let's go to the lightning round. Andy?
This is for you, Wes. In 1985 on this date, Tipper Gorse was before a congressional committee and was talking about the bad language that was on a lot of the rock albums at the time, and she wanted to have a parental label put on it advising them that there was some bad stuff on there. Can you imagine how times have changed?
Betsy?
I just wanted to talk about ABC's suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's late night show that sparked national conversation about free speech in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. It seems like the president does not want anybody on TV saying anything that's critical of him, and that they may lose their broadcasting license. And I think this is an invasion of free speech, but I also think it's to get us away from thinking about his relationship with Epstein.
I'm going to change mine in light of that. Mike, who needs Jimmy Kimmel when you have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Well, I noticed that in August, Roy Cooper was 8 points ahead of Michael Whatley in the potential Senate race in the Carolina Journal poll, which has been a pretty good history of accuracy. One they did this week in September has been cut in half to 4%. If it wasn't for that close election with Pat McCrory in 2016, I could safely predict Roy Cooper is probably in for his closest statewide race. But that was an awful close one in 2016. Come back and join us again next week for Political Smackdown.